Hi, I'm Les Bubka, and my guest today is Ken Knight from Ken Fu TV. Ken, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, Les. How are you? Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's pleasure. It's pleasure. I love your channel, so I thought I'm gonna speak to the men, and I like your approach to practical karate. And as we talked before, I like the changes you do, and we're gonna talk about it hopefully. And you're gonna give us your secrets.
Yes, all the secrets. There's no secret recipes over here.
uh, so start with the introduction. What is your background, and what led you to karate?
Okay, so maybe I'll reverse that. Led me to karate originally, besides being a kid who loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Karate Kid and all of that kind of stuff, right? Um, was my family got me involved, me and my little brother, in a karate school in Alabama, where I spent the summers in Alabama, and then I would be in Wyoming the rest of the year. And so I went to this karate school and really loved it. It was everything that I had ever hoped from being, watching the movies and the shows and all that kind of stuff. Which is an interesting thing to say, because if you do martial arts, then you'd probably go, "Yeah, class is nothing like the movies."
Yeah.
Um, but maybe I was just insightful as a kid and just realized that that's what it would actually look like, and the effort you'd have to put in, and it wouldn't just be a cool montage with great music that would just jump you to something else. And so, but the difficulty for me actually was it was a Japanese karate style. It was Yoshikai karate. And when I was moving back into the summer, I was coming back and I talked to my sensei and said, "Hey, how do I keep this going? I've only been doing this for a couple of months." And he said, "Well, go find a Japanese karate school." He said, "If you can't find this school, go find a Japanese karate school." Well, I couldn't. I came back and there's some taekwondo and stuff, and I never really found it. And for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like trying something else yet.
Mhm.
And so it was many, many years that went by, until I was working the job that I work now, and my boss mentioned a good client of ours that had been there for a long time, and he said, "Yeah, he does karate and that stuff. He's even gone to Japan to train and stuff like that." And so one day I was working on his laptop. I've got parts of his laptop in my hands, and I'm like, "So you do karate?" And he started talking to me about it. And he said, "You should come by, try it out." And I've been there ever since. Um, I actually a few years ago took over the school and now run the school for him. He still trains with me, and so I still get to train under him and learn from him. But now I run the school and teach the classes. In between there, uh, I did. We had a connection with a guy who did Filipino martial arts.
Mhm.
Coincidentally, I was working with his nephew. He's going, "Hey, you should meet my uncle. You'd like this stuff. He does this stuff with sticks. You'd love it." Well, come to find out that he had taught at my school a number of times, and everybody knew who he was. And I fell in love with the Filipino martial arts.
Okay.
Um, I had a good friend who taught Aikido. I think the interesting thing about martial arts is you have a tendency to, once you start meeting martial artists, you meet more martial artists.
Yeah.
And so I met a good friend of mine now who does Aikido. He was a live-in student at the Aikido in New York. And so I trained with him for a while. That one I didn't get to spend as much time as I'd like, and I still don't, because our schedules just don't line up.
Mhm.
We teach about the same time. But so that's kind of the majority of it. I've done kind of different things here and there, but primary my primary set is Okinawan karate and kabuto, uh, kali eskrima, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, some tai chi, and then a little bit of aikido along the way.
How do you find time to all do all this stuff and have a full-time job?
Well, I mean, you're seeing right now that sleep must not be very important to me. Now, and I
Yeah.
get lucky. The most of those things for me, the karate, the kabuto, the jujitsu, um, they were all taught to me by the same instructor.
Mhm.
And so it became really easy because it would just be stuff that we did. The Tai Chi came later, and I would literally just sneak off on my lunch to do that because it happened at a local senior center, and it would happen around the same time as my lunch. So I shifted my lunch a little bit, and I just go do that, and instead of taking a lunch break. Uh, and you find ways to make it work, I think.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem to find stuff for working out and trying new things till the children arrives, and now I don't have time for anything. But hey ho.
Right.
So soon they're gonna be a bit older, so I can start doing my stuff again. But I think you're,
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. It's like a law of attraction. You meet more martial artists, and that brings more martial artists, and then more martial artists, and they end up being just friends with the friends of martial artists.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and what was funny for me is that, I live in a fairly small town in Casper, Wyoming, and people go, "Oh, there's not a lot of martial arts here," because they go, "Well, there's that one taekwondo school, and there's, whatever." We actually have quite a few. As doing that, I learned there's a bunch of schools, just most of them, especially people like my instructor, they just didn't talk about it.
Mhm.
He's a professional business owner in town. He's very successful, and but I don't need people to know that this is who I am and what I do. I don't need that to become a problem for me or anything like that. He's very humble. He didn't need people to know that I find him very, very good. And he just didn't need people to know that. So
Mhm.
him and some of the people that he's exposed me to, they just didn't talk about it. And so a lot of times you kind of have to do some digging to find out just how many people are training around you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good quality to have to not be like us showing off on YouTube.
Right. That's been an interesting thing to kind of um, reconcile in my head, even, because the truth is I don't think I'm very good, and I think a lot of us probably feel that way.
Mm.
When we think about if we measure ourselves against the progress we'd like to make, we always feel like there's a lot of room to grow. And so it's hard to put yourself out there thinking, well, I don't want to be disingenuous. I don't want people to think that I feel more about myself than I do.
Yeah.
Uh, which is why I had so many ideas with the YouTube channel, and the biggest piece that's kind of stayed consistent well, it was consistent intentionally, uh, but is the Ken Learns Ken Fu thing, where it's kind of like a journal in a way. It's my way of being able to just kind of record my thoughts on things, which is way easier for me than writing in a notebook, um, and be able to maybe save that stuff for, part of my big driving force for me personally is being able to have recorded my thoughts and ideas so that at least my students and friends that I've trained with, you know, I'm no stranger to the idea of mortality. I may not always be here,
Yeah.
and this way, there's parts of me that they can always have.
It's funny that we all people, whoever I talk to, doesn't matter how good they are, um, posting stuff online or selling stuff, they have some kind of feeling of being imposters. So I'm not doing, I'm not that good as I people get me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which
which is
that
a cool trait, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Which that leads me to a question which I ask everybody.
Okay.
What impact karate had or has on your mental
Oh
health?
yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Impact on karate to my mental health for me is huge, and probably the biggest driving force of why I continue to do it. Uh, I was not any kind of jock or any kind of thing like that. I didn't. I had a few good friends. I was good acquaintances with all kinds of people, but really didn't hang out with a lot of people. Certainly not somebody I'd consider popular. And and as a nerd, I love computers and stuff. That's my day job, is computer stuff, and I love all this photography stuff and things like that. So I was interested in that sort of thing, and so equally goes with that is maybe not necessarily a lot of confidence. And that's probably one of the biggest things that has come for me out of it, is really this overwhelming idea that nothing can stop me,
Mm.
that I can achieve anything that I want to achieve. And in the face of adversity, I have this background confidence. I joke with people, a kind of half joke, because I believe it for myself, which is, I have to work with the public a lot. I've been moving the company that I'm in has continued to move, and we're a kind of a uh, bigger scale, not a lot of people in our team, but a bigger scale IT team that works with a lot of businesses and different industries in our area. So I work with a lot of people, and I work with a lot of very successful people, and but I've also worked with the regular homegoer, that kind of thing, and anytime I've been stuck in a situation where someone's getting animated and heated, and the situation might be kind of difficult. In my head, I it just kind of think to myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, but I could kill you though. Uh, and I say it like a joke, but in a way it's kind of not. It's this idea that if absolutely everything went bad, if you decided that you were, um, oh, what just happened to my? Can you see me? Okay, I think my
Yeah,
camera just.
I can hear you.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. As long as you can, the camera did a weird thing on the screen. So, um, but as long as the worst thing that could ever happen is you could come across this counter at me, and the fact that I feel like that probably wouldn't be that bad means I can talk to you and we can figure this out. And
Mhm.
I've never had anything lead to that direction because instead we're talking to things and figured out. It gives me knowing that that's in my back pocket gave me the confidence uh, to. Oh,
I still hear
maybe
you.
I'm back. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Gave me the confidence to maybe uh, be able to stay in it and just see what's going on with you. And karate has shown me because as people have come in and especially as I've continued to take over more of the teaching role, um, people open up to you
Mhm.
and you start to realize how many people are hurting. Um, and that was really eye opening for me. Realizing that no matter how many statistics I looked at, recognizing that the number of people I know that had been molested or raped or things like that, I just had no idea.
Mhm.
It's around you all the time, and people are dealing with it and they're struggling with it. And I just had no way of knowing that until I started meeting so many people and realizing that so many people are having trouble, having challenges, and that doing stuff, finding good people with a good activity that want to be around each other and aren't judging each other, is helpful. It helps me. It helps other people, and I know that because they tell me it does, uh, and that drives me to stay doing it.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think for me from my experience that what you said, the non-judgmental environment is the key to it. When people feel
Yeah,
comfortable and they can talk about it, it makes everything easier.
yeah.
Really is. Um, so Kenfu TV, why not Kendo TV? I can imagine that you don't want to be associated with the kendo sticks, but
And which is funny. I have a whole bushel of Shinai and Boken, um, but
yeah,
that was in a way that was part of it. I mean, it truly starts when I was a kid. Making a joke about oh yeah, well I know he does kung fu, but I do kenfu, and and that was just a joke that stuck with me. But then as it kind of became that I might give this thing a name and do something with it, there was a part of that realizing, well, one, I don't want to be disingenuous. I don't want people to find Kendo TV and find out that they're not there to see Kendo. I believe Kendo is a beautiful art, and there are people very passionate about it. And I really didn't want people to be like, come on, this guy, like this has nothing to do with Kendo. I've watched way too much of this to find out this has nothing to do with Kendo.
Mm,
and and actually, my Filipino martial arts instructor, somebody really, really important to me, he actually calls me Kendo. He started doing that years ago, and and I always liked that because it was kind of the way of right, which in a way I think matches more, and it certainly, especially when you look at Karate Do versus the Karate Jutsu, kind
mm.
of that idea that certainly matches my personality better, maybe. But Kenfu, stuck with the less disingenuous, less confusing, certainly less alternate search results. Maybe Kenfu's easier
Yeah,
to
yeah.
find if you're actually looking for it, and then just something from my childhood.
As we're talking about the Kung Fu TV, do a bit of advertisement for yourself. Tell us more about your channel, what we can find, what interesting stuff. I know what interesting stuff is there, but people who are listening might not know. So go.
Oh,
Give me
sure, okay.
self-advertising.
Okay, self-advertising. I just told you I'm really bad at this. No, but
Practice.
Kenfu TV, the main thing that I do, I believe that when you look at this stuff, the biggest thing is to have some kind of consistency, and that helps me stick to it. And so I kind of broke it initially into 3 to 4 parts because I never do anything halfway, I guess. And Ken Learns Ken Fu was the main thing, which is basically me kind of reflecting as I continue to learn, which is probably the part that I needed this for the most, because in a way, this is something I needed for me to process and to work through when I'm recording a video talking about something that I'm learning or thinking about. It's giving me a way to process it and internalize it to myself and think my way through it. Sometimes I'm making um, new ideas and things happen to me during the videos because I'm realizing something about it because I'm talking to you about it and just something pops in your head that you hadn't thought of yet.
Mhm.
And so that's Ken Learns Ken Fu. That's kind of the idea when something comes up and I'm thinking about it. Lately, I've been doing a lot of stuff on books. I have maybe one that I might have to talk about here soon. Uh,
I was just gonna ask you if it arrived yet or not. 'Cause I'm
It
always
did. It did. I meant to tell you that. Yes, no, it is here, and I'm very excited. But yeah, so I've been as I read books. One day, I decided to pull a passage about a book and be like, I'm just going to talk about this. This is something that I need to think about, and I want to talk about it. And that has been really popular. People like that, and I like it too. But so that was Ken Learns Ken Fu. Ken Shares Ken Fu was my direction, my idea for sharing technique and things like that. More of the in dojo stuff. COVID-19's kind of put a
Mhm.
pretty big pinch on that specifically because I had the ideas for how I wanted to do that. Um, and it's secondary to me. So many people are doing technique, and so many people are doing really good technique. Um, and so I'm actually working on a new idea of exposing other people's stuff because I think that that's really important. But that's the idea of Ken Shares Ken Fu. I have this thing that I call Things Ken Likes, which is it was my kind of review idea. I'm into EDC and different kinds of stuff, and figured I'd just have like a review thing where I could just talk about I like this. I don't have to be the camera review guy or the knife review guy or the this review guy. I could just be like, well, this is something I like, and I'm gonna tell you about it. I've done a few of those. Surprisingly, they are the most popular by a order of magnitude, and I've done like 3 of them.
Mhm.
Um, and which is funny to me, because I look and they're always remaining at the top of my list, no matter how many videos I do. And then lastly was this Brewing Budo idea that has only kicked off a little bit, which was my podcast idea of sitting down and having a beer with the guys, from the dojo um, and maybe ringing up my instructor and just talking and just letting whatever comes of it kind of
Mhm.
thing. I just believe maybe that we just need to talk more as people
Yeah,
and we need to work through ideas and we need to communicate with each other. And so I think that's probably the theme you're going to see in the stuff that I do.
excellent. It's funny because I was looking, when I'm doing my videos, I look what's the most interesting topics, and it's always unboxing things and reviewing
Oh
books. So
yeah.
I understand it, you know.
And I actually
I
I
don't.
really love watching unboxing videos too. Uh, I the weird nerd part of me that just loves cataloging. What is that? What's this like? Does this have this thing? Does it have that thing? I've got this weird proclivity towards knowing things. I go like the hardware store, for example, or something like that. Go to the store and I like to just walk through and look and just kind of catalog what's available. And then that way when something I'm like, you know what I need to do that. I have this thing and maybe that comes from the IT stuff where my job is literally puzzles and problem
I,
solving. So
I
the more
think
you kind of collect ideas.
it's the engineering thing. You're an engineer, and you.
Yeah, kind of network.
My wife is exactly the same. She's an engineer, and is exactly the same. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well,
Gadgets,
at least I'm not
gadgets.
crazy.
You're saying about the talking with people. That's what I found as well interesting because I done the first interview with Andy Allen. I
Mhm.
made a mistake and the picture didn't come up good at all. So people advised me do a podcast. So I thought, well, I don't really want a podcast. What am I gonna be talking about? People don't like my voice. I don't like my voice. But it's the most popular thing I have. It's just growing so quickly. I do a little bit of a podcasting and whenever I can, and people actually like it. So I think you're right that people just want to listen other people talking and get the comfort from that.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you're doing it because I've really enjoyed the podcast. I know I think you're calling it like the accidental podcast or something like that.
Yeah,
I like that idea. Like I didn't mean to do this, but here I am. And it's great and you're bringing together people and having great conversations and I think it's awesome.
yeah. Thank you. Hopefully, I'm not gonna run out of time and ideas, but we'll see. We'll see what the future holds.
That's right.
My next question is about you. You joined the practical karate movement. You are in the World Combat Association, which I'm
Yep.
part of the group as well, but on the UK end. So my question is, why did you switch to the practical karate? What made you to say, "Hey, I want to do it practically"?
Sure. That's a great question, and one that's been on my mind a lot. Um, because I think some of these things kind of happen organically, and you got to kind of reflect to realize that they've been happening as long as they have. Um, but really, so I have a really great instructor, somebody I really admire and appreciate, and he taught me. I mean, I am who I am, and I know what I know, and I do what I do because of him. And and that was always his focus, right? We never competed, we never had any competition, anything like that. It was never based that direction. Um, it was always how do we make sure this stuff works, um, which I never had a problem with, and I always kind of went with. There were little things here and there that would kind of stand out, like I don't know why we do that, or that seems kind of weird, or um, and then I think as for so many people who've come into the practical karate route, Ian Abernathy, you run into Ian Abernathy at some point looking at some video, and then and I, because of who I am as a person, I binged his entire podcast, um, and because I drive around a lot for work, so I kicked it on, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And he was talking, the thing that stuck out to me the most was this idea of kind of hacking away that unessential, right? The parts like, why do we still do three-step sparring? Why do we still? And that made me realize, yeah, why I don't hate what we do, and I think I think that the value that I have for what I believe I can do is based in the fact that we do it. But could we be more efficient? Is there some of the stuff that there's better ways to do it now? And even he had kind of said that at one point. It's not that it didn't work. Maybe it didn't work, but some of this, not that it didn't work, but we have better ways to do it now, and why not do it that way? And that led me to finding people like yourself and other people that as I continue to talk and listen, I continue to see a lot of people seeing the same thing, that are like, yeah, how do we make sure that not is our art practical, which I think we all hoped that it would be when we went to it. We believed somewhere that it was. But how are we spending our time? And that became um, very specifically important to me when I started working with a guy named Sean Stark, who uh, he runs the Guerrilla Global. It's a guerrilla self-protection movement that he's doing. I like the whole guerrilla imagery because it's the idea of like just getting people to rise up and realize that they can take control of their self-protection. But it was kind of an accident. I was on Instagram, as many things began for me, talking to different people, and his handle at the time was Salat Junkie, and I was always a huge fan of the Indonesian artist Salat, and I thought that was really cool. But I had no one near me that I would ever learn that from. And at one point on one of his posts, he's showing doing stuff, and it said train with me, DM for training, and fine, I'll just hit him up and talk to him about it. And we started talking, but what that led to was something entirely different. Um, not disingenuously, like he didn't do that to me to bait and switch or anything like that. Like we still spend a good time on that, but his focus recently in his life had shifted to self-protection and this guerrilla, at the time it was called guerrilla salat model, because he was doing things in like third world countries and stuff like that, and we had really great conversations. The original focus was specifically self-protection to prevent human trafficking, which
Mhm.
I now, just like the other stuff, realize is way more real than I ever wanted to think it was. Um, and he would talk about, he's like, yeah, I'm in a different country and I'm there for 10 days with people that only partially care. How do you get somebody a skill that might save their life or keep them out of that human trafficking kind of environment in 10 days? And so we were talking about he brought up the 20%, 20% of your techniques solve 80% of your problems.
Yeah.
And that kind of really kind of brought things into a laser focus. So I obviously had already kind of been feeling that way. And then we're having these conversations where I'm going, man, I was thinking, how do I do this from a martial art perspective? And then he's going, yeah, if you take all that out, how do you do it in a week's time? Or if you only get a weekend with somebody, how do you provide? And the truth is martial artists, and I love the martial arts. I love the ceremony of it and the whole, everything, all of it. I love all of it. But it really, it implies this is a lifelong journey, which I believe it should be. But ideally, you don't want to be a lifetime into it before you can finally do something with it,
Yeah.
if you needed to. So it led me to thinking between that and the stuff that I was hearing from Ian Abernathy and all the people like yourself that I started hearing about it. It's just this constant idea of, yeah, how do I make sure that we're targeting this directly and kind of not wasting time, so to speak, making sure that our training is practical and functional. Not to use the word, but it's the word, right? And just make sure that that was my focus. I still don't have any interest in competition. I still don't have any interest in some of that kind of stuff because I want to make sure that all of my time is spent the direction that I think is important. And we can still have fun, right? It doesn't have to be serious and dreadful and make us not sleep at night. But I can make tweaks to what we do to make sure that the skills and the exercises and the training are just leading that way faster, I think.
Sure. I'm kind of on an odd one in all that group because I'm not focused on self-defense. I don't do it.
Yeah.
Advertise, I don't do any. For me, it's more about enjoying it. But somehow,
Yeah.
the way I've been taught, it's kind of resulting with people being able to deal with it. But at the moment, I'm just a bit like you, realizing how much I don't know. So I'm trying to educate myself more about the law. And today I was doing the with Jamie Club about the de-escalation and all about the soft skills.
Oh, that looked really good. I wish I would
have
have got on there.
I think they recorded it, so it's gonna be probably available.
Oh, amazing! Because that's been a big one. I literally was in a notebook the other day thinking about curriculum and stuff, and I just have a section called things I don't know how to teach. And that's on there, de-escalation. I have practice in doing it through just different parts of my life. I could certainly be better, but where I really struggle is going, how do I pass that to somebody else besides just be like, well, the way I did it is I just did it, so here you go.
I think one thing which I took it from today, it's actually you know more than you think. It's just like when you hear that from authority, you just go, yeah, that made sense, but I did knew that before. I just didn't realize it. So yeah, it's a really good one. I highly recommend the podcast and all the stuff from Jamie Club. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
You saying about changing stuff, having fun. That's my next question. What changes have you done to your syllabus, and what are the results? I start because I changed my syllabus completely 2 years ago, and my students love it. The new ways of mainly training with a partner, a bit of a more different methodology from different sources. How do you approach that?
I approach it through failure because not everything I've tried has worked very well. And it has. I mean, I don't want to misspeak. People really enjoy it. They really enjoy training. I've got a great group of people that are letting me experiment and try different things, and are not going to go anywhere because they've enjoyed what they're doing. They enjoy the people they're around. And so that's been really good because I've had to backtrack a few times where I've headed one way. When I took over, one of the things I kind of originally did is I really stopped focusing on curriculum, so to speak. My instructor, everybody's promotions and testing was different. Like nobody ever had the same test. Everybody needed different things to grow personally. And so it was based on that. It was, while there would be maybe a basic set of criteria from our original organization, that didn't necessarily mean that had anything to do with your test. And I always appreciated that, and that made a lot of sense. So as I kind of took over, I kind of went, well, I don't even know if I'm going to even worry too much about that. Like, I'm just going to continue to focus on building people, working on maximizing the things that their strengths, and working on lifting the areas that they could be stronger in, um, and realizing that we're all different people, we're all different sizes. We got, I've had people with all kinds of different situations, all the way to people that have no legs, things like that, that really challenges how do you teach different situations and how do you put that in a box. Um, but you learn. And what I did learn is that, okay, that while that worked, it certainly expanded things to being even longer. I just talked about how that whole um, lifetime, it shouldn't take you a lifetime to do this stuff. Well, okay, well now how everything was spreading out. And at the same time, I had also gotten rid of colored belts. So we went back to having just white belts, unless you had a black belt. And which was amazing because there's always that kind of internal bickering where somebody gets promoted and then somebody else doesn't think that they think that they're at least as good as that person, but they're not promoted yet. Um, and there's always looking down at each other's belts to figure out where they fit in the pecking order. And got rid of the belts. It actually went over surprisingly well. No issues. Went and got with Kataro, who does really high quality belts, and said, "Well, this is gonna be the last one you're gonna have for a while, so let's get you a good one." And and at first it was kind of hard, and I offered to people who had been a while that had maybe multiple belts to, I'm glad to order you a colored belt as you get promoted so that you can complete that set for yourself. So I didn't want to just throw them out on that, but it was almost overnight. People just focused on helping each other, and they just focused on working together and becoming better, and they just forgot to compete with each other, which is amazing. I want that. I want people to want to help each other, because when you help the person next to you, you help yourself, and then that person helps you too. And so that was awesome. And so between having white belts, which made it suddenly really hard, I realized just how important colored belts are for an instructor. They might be good motivators, and I kind of went, yeah, that's the wrong motivation, and I'm okay with filtering out people who that is their motivation or whatever. What I really found is, man, when I don't have those, it gets kind of hard to remember to test people. And um, we did do a Nufurikake, because when I trained in Aikido, I really liked the idea that your rank was on the wall, and then when you were on the mat, it wasn't relevant, but there it was. Um, and so we did stuff like that. But what I really started to realize is that I was moving all these different directions because I was exploring and learning myself. I'm going through this metamorphosis of my own self, which happens multiple times, I think, for anybody who trains for a long time. And because of that, I was realizing that I was probably in my heart, I didn't feel like I was doing a good job for people. Nobody was upset. Everybody's been happy. I've never had anybody leave or get frustrated, and they just focus on developing their skill. And I think that's incredible. And I think that's very genuine and very good. But it doesn't mean I don't want to reward them, and it doesn't mean I don't want them to eventually get a black belt and that kind of thing, because I do think that at some point that's important to them. And so I've been starting to try to structure how I go about working on the skills that I think are critical, the ways that we need to train them, and how we bring it back into focus with all the stuff that I've learned. And my goal, and that when I noticed that it was a thing you could do, part of the motivation was joining the World Combat Association. Is you can have recognized ranker, you could have a recognized approved syllabus, and I went, I want to try to do that. I want to try to build a syllabus and work with people to have a syllabus that matches this practical methodology. It's been really fun watching, like Andy Allen, like you mentioned him. He's got some videos where he has made his syllabus, and he's kind of shared some of that. Watching that process has been really cool and really, really helpful for me. And I've been spending a lot of time thinking about the fact that I do think it's important. You can't just get rid of it. Maybe if it's just you and a couple people, that's one thing. But if you're going to run a school with a lot of people, there has to be some structure. If nothing else, just to make sure you remember to teach everything. Sometimes you look at somebody and go, "Oh, I didn't realize I haven't taught you that yet."
Mm.
It hasn't come up recently, and I didn't realize that I should probably teach you that. So I want to, if nothing else, make sure that I'm not leaving things out, and maybe do that by coming back to having a curriculum, uh, coming full circle. A lot of people that would laugh at getting rid of curriculum are probably going, "Yeah, there you go. You finally figured it out. You have to have one."
Yeah, well, yeah, I've done about 5 different ways of doing it. You know, learning, dropping it off, and my current version is it's the curriculum is for me, like you said. Yeah, it's a guide for me what I want to teach people when.
Yeah,
Um, People basically don't care if they've got a good training and they learn, it's fine. And they, I think
yeah,
my guys appreciate that I'm trying to provide the best service I can and keep trying new things. It makes not boring, and they've got something to laugh at me later. So,
right.
and as well, I dropped the kind of examination grading stuff. So I just doing like a BJJ guys. So we're looking through the year, what the progression is, and I decide like usually with somebody else from outside, so I can check if I'm not biased and say, yeah, you work hard through the year, that's your belt. But we kept the color belts. I tried once
Well,
without belt
sure.
at all, but people haven't been motivated. I've been
Uh,
a lot of different avenues which led nowhere, so I come back and always come back to the karate. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but,
You've got to
but
be willing to fail, right? You've got to be able to allow yourself to try those things, though.
you said you've got people from different walks of lives and different abilities. I've teach as well
Mhm.
people who are less able or have mental problems or something like that. I don't like that word, mental problems. Um,
Yeah.
it sounds wrong and it's wrong, but you know, my lack
Yep.
of English sometimes it catches up with me. So let's say that they're not
Yeah.
unwell at the moment. That's the better way to
Sure.
say it. How
Yes.
how
Challenges.
do, how do you adjust your classes to suit people with different abilities?
Um, it's a difficult thing to answer, maybe, because really, it all depends, and I think that's a pat answer. And Noah Lego would be really happy that I just said that. Uh, but it depends. Different things have different needs, um, and there's just no way to even put that into a box. If somebody's got, somebody who's been raped, for example, and is working through the mental difficulties of recovery. Um, how you deal with the things that are going to be challenges for them is not the same that you would deal with somebody who is missing a limb. That they're just not the same. And so it's been very, very unique. And that's all I can do is I just am really open with them, especially if the situation is more of a challenge, like having somebody who was a double amputee. That was a very big challenge. And all I could do is be honest and say, we're going to work with this together. I'm going to need you to talk to me because while I can think of how this might need to work, you're going to have to teach me about what it's like so that we can make these adjustments together. And I think we'll get you there. Uh, but we're going to need to communicate. And it's worked really great. I think being open with people and recognizing and not being afraid to not have all the answers goes a really long way towards being able to have a collaboration and a partnership with that person and get them where they want to go.
I do love your answer because that's what I'm finding as well. I recently working for few instructors who asking me how to work with people with mental health or physical disabilities or and other problems.
Yeah,
And the biggest barrier they all have or we have is the fear of asking. If you don't ask the person, how can I help you? How we can make it better together? You know, I'm
right.
not you. I'm not in your body. I don't know what you're going through. If you don't give me some indication how I can help you, there's no way I'm gonna guess, and I probably do more harm than good. Um,
Right.
I love your answer. It hits it's the head on the nail, isn't it? Nail on the head, head on the nail.
Nail that. We
Head
can hit the head on the nail too.
but you know, it nails it, nails it.
Nails it. Yeah.
That's the one. My
I love that, because it's the same. I feel the same way. I'm not in your body. I just, I'll never have any way to know. All I can ever do is recognize that I'll never know. I can think as hard as I want that I have a really good idea, and I just don't have a clue.
Yeah,
You
yes,
know?
exactly, exactly. I'm actually gonna be talking about it on our karate for mental health seminar. That's my section of adapting karate for.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see how that's gonna go. It's my first kind of speaking like that about it. But hey ho, have to try.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's really great. I think that's going to go great too. Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing for me was just realizing I have two philosophies that are very similar. You know, I never want money to be a reason somebody can't train. And I never want, if somebody's willing to put in the time, I am too.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, if only one person shows up, but they showed up, let's do it. You know, and I think if somebody is willing to put in the time, which is the only thing we can truly pay with, really, um, and wants to do it, then I want to help. And because I live by that philosophy, I really have no choice. If somebody comes in, I refuse to turn them away. So the only thing I have, you know, is I have to do it. I have to figure out ways to work with people. And I think sometimes maybe if you start there and just realize that you want to help, period,
Mm.
um, it will get you making the right decisions and working through it.
Yeah, I exactly agree with you totally. Because for me, I had a few times that I was on the brink of closing the dojo, but there was always one guy turning up. We have a joke now at the club that I keep trying to get rid of Gary, but he keeps coming back. One day I'm gonna manage to get rid of him, but he keeps coming back.
uh,
Everything always no, I want to learn. He really, really puts up, and he now's looking for a Kali instructor and the sticks. I have
oh,
no interest in the weapons and stuff, but he actually booked himself to go to Philippines for training, but the
oh,
COVID
amazing.
COVID
Oh,
happened.
yeah,
He
yeah, yeah, yeah.
postponed it. But yeah, he was said to me, "Oh, are you gonna be disrespected if I'm gonna go and do that?" I said, "No, just go and find the dojo, and I can help you." Ian actually helped me to find the dojos for him.
Oh, that's great.
Um,
Yeah,
what?
I can definitely say with COVID, we've done a lot of Zoom training and online training and stuff like that. Easily, jujitsu's the hardest,
Yeah.
and eskrima has been 100% the easiest. So the kali, the sticks, absolutely has been the easiest to teach long distance. So hopefully that means he's got a lot of good opportunities still available to him. I love it. Truly, I struggle sometimes with if I actually would stay karate. If I had to choose, would I choose karate? And I don't know. I don't know. So far, I haven't had to choose, and I'm really happy about that. And I'm fortunate in the Kali Eskrima that I do was developed by a guy who at one point had another system called Kajikumi, and Kaji stood for Karate, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, and
Mm.
Eskrima. And so his background was very karate based himself. Um, so that's easy for me because it kind of ties them in together. So, but I love it. I think it's really, really good. And the empty hand parts of it, we literally had to talk. So I taught yesterday, Saturday, and we were looking at the empty hand application because Eskrima is a complete system. It's not just the sticks; it's lots of things. Um, and it was funny because we were looking at a certain type of parrying, and most of my students in that class are also karate students.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, well, I need you to realize that the only thing weird about this is that we have an opposite foot forward. We're doing it kind of gyaku, but really all we're doing is ageuke and geronuke. And that was all it was. I mean, and they looked at it and it was exactly, we're doing ageuke and geronuke with the opposite foot forward. Um, and, you know, it's the same stuff. Our joints and bodies only move certain ways.
Yeah.
So it's just a different focus. In some ways, I think the methodology of teaching eskrima is uh, infinitely more direct, and I really really like that about it.
So I'm presuming you're nicking stuff from methodology, from Eskrima. I've got exactly the same with wrestling. If I start wrestling before karate, I probably will never go to karate.
Oh,
Karate.
sure.
Uh, yeah, but I prefer the methodology of teaching from wrestling. So most of my teaching is based on that. So I suppose for you is now Kali creeps in, Eskrima creeps in and taking over the methodology.
It definitely creeps in a little bit. Oh, but that makes me think that when you asked about curriculum and changes that I've made, I meant to mention probably the largest change that I actually made and am happy with, is we went from a long distance, what I would call more of a competitive style, sambung kumite kind of thing, to grappling. I think it seems like most of the practical karate people, if I would have to say, at least it was for me, that was the big change, is realizing this stuff happens a lot closer,
Yeah.
just like fights happen a lot closer, altercations happen a lot closer, and just moving people 2 feet closer to each other and locking hands and stuff like that changes everything. The perspective
Yeah.
completely changes, and it puts so much into context. I don't think that you can tie up with somebody um, and not realize how much more applicable your karate is.
Yeah.
One big struggle that I always had was when we trained. You do a sparring, and it's hard to spar. I always actually fight sparring idea just because of the idea that I feel like it doesn't train the right things. And when we move to grappling and kind of Ian calls it the katabe sparring and stuff like that, but even just moving to the grappling range, suddenly you realize all those techniques, because when you're dancing around with each other more of a competitive style, and then you kind of shoot in, do a couple things and shoot back out, you never ever, hardly ever actually get to apply all the techniques you were taught. I've been taught all these techniques, and then I never get to do any of them when I spar. But then suddenly you lock hands with somebody and you're a little bit closer, and you're dealing with their limbs and stuff, and all of those techniques are there, all of them.
Mm.
And I'll never go back, because it brought them together. They're no longer separate. And when those two things were separate, they just didn't make sense.
Mm.
Um, so that's probably the biggest change that we've made, is a huge grappling focus, which your wrestling background probably helps a lot
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. I fell in love second time with karate via wrestling.
Yeah?
I just I've got a fantastic coach with a wealth of experience. He's nearly 70 now. Um, and he got a few students who went on Olympics, but his ability to look at movements and translate them to anything wrestling, and explain to you that no, that's what you're actually doing. So like, uchiuki is an arm drag. He said, oh, why don't you grab and pull, and then it comes, yeah, it's arm drag, and then you follow with the sotouki for us, and then you've got the pull and the throw. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not the block.
Wait, this has been here the whole time?
It just makes you feel, I've been then, I was black belt, I was brown belt or something like that, and you're thinking, I feel like a child here. I don't know
Yeah,
nothing.
right.
But it's good for the development. So
It
um,
is. It's the coolest learning stage, right? The uh, conscious incompetence. You
yeah,
suddenly realize you don't know anything.
it keeps happening. It keeps happening. But I'm happy that it's happening. You
Me
learn from
too.
people all the time. What would you recommend people to do if there is some instructor thinking now, sitting at home, I would like to do practical karate? What
Mm.
steps would you suggest? Because I liked your video. I know you explained that in your video about the British Combat Association. But if you could guide us through your steps, getting in there, being
Y-
practical.
Sure. I think the most important thing is already done, which is that you've already realized that you want to do it. Because and it doesn't matter what that thing is. I think that's the biggest step in anything. Whether you're right or wrong, you have your reasons for wanting to do something a certain way, and recognizing that that's a direction you want to go is the biggest and most important step. Everything after that is easier. If I have a recommendation, the biggest recommendation I have is surround yourself with people that are trying to go the direction you're trying to go. Um, Back to communication and talking to people. Put people around you who are doing it, are further down the path than you. The whole sensei idea anyway. Um, but people who are already doing it, people who are trying to do it, and then maybe even put yourself in a place of helping somebody who's also trying to do it, so that everybody's moving forward. Um, and that will expose you to, I think, everything you need. There might be good steps, and there might be people who would be better at putting it in a chronological order, do this, then this, then this. But I think the biggest thing for me has just been surrounding myself with people that are trying to make it happen, and we all learn together.
Great advice. Great advice. What is the future plans for Kenfu TV? What your current and future projects? What we're gonna see?
Sure. I mean, the Ken Learns Ken Fu's gonna just keep on trucking. It's amazing to me. I always figure I'll run out of things to say or things to think about, but since it's reflections of things going on, I don't think I ever will.
Mm.
But I hope to share a lot more, just because of the fact that I'm working through all this stuff. I want to share a lot more technique, even though I talked about how that part's not as important to me. It's not from that perspective. I think there's a lot of good technique, but I want to share more just so that there's a frame of reference for myself. Something that I did a long time ago. I had some students move away, um, and they wanted to keep training, and so I just started recording all the classes. And when I opened, I've trained long enough to have opened an Eskrima school. I teach Eskrima in my own school. And when I did that, I started recording classes day one, and for years I recorded every class. That way I could give that to my students, and here's everything. I can see, we can go back, and it's fun to go back and look at the progress that they've made and actually see that. I think being able to show somebody, when you're feeling really down about your progress, if you actually look at yourself 5 years ago, and if there's a recording of it that you can go look at, you'll realize just how far you've come. And it helps with that perspective to help keep yourself motivated, to realize that any change, positive change that you're making, is glacially slow compared to what other people are recognizing in you. And sometimes video is a really good way to help that, but then also to be able to go, hey, here's where we were, here's how we did things, here's all that. And so I want to share some of that stuff just so that my students have references and things like that to continue. And if other people like it, if it helps, bring awareness to the idea that karate is more than, the thing that we hear all the time is, like, somebody like, oh, I do karate. And they're like, isn't that for kids? And,
Yeah.
just even if it just brings awareness to the fact that karate is absolutely applicable, it's absolutely effective and perfectly practical, and that law enforcement and different things like that can totally use this kind of training. They don't have to go find, they have these kind of things available. Just bringing exposure to it is kind of the idea. I don't know what it completely looks like. I guess if people have ideas, they can tell me what they think they would be good. The truth is, I'm going to go my path regardless. I refuse to, there's so many things to be successful on YouTube or things like that. You've got to do all of this stuff, and you've got to follow all these trends and do all these things. And I can tell you that you can't expect to see me do that, because I just don't care. I want to do what I want to do. I want to follow and explore my journey and just share it with people.
Yeah, same for me. I'm always up the stream. People tell me, send you so many emails. No, I can't be bothered. I don't like spam in my mailbox. Why would I send it to somebody else?
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it just yeah, great stuff. I always cringe when I'm looking at my videos from like 5, 6 years ago, and I say, "What have you been thinking?"
Yes, it is different. I cringe every time I look at a camera and see my face staring back at me and hear my voice recording bouncing back to me, but for some reason people keep looking at it, so I guess it's not breaking as many screens as I thought it was. So
Yeah, same here. Can you tell us where can we find you? So your Instagrams and everything.
Oh, sure. So I've tried really hard, thankfully, because Kenfu TV is not, previously I had a thing called The Land Legend, which I still have, but nobody ever had that name. So anytime you see that, it's me. And same thing, Kenfu TV, nobody has that. So if you see Kenfu TV, it's me. If you're looking for me on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or any of that, Kenfu TV is going to get you there. But if you want an easy way, my website is kenfu.tv. And all of those things kind of funnel into that one place.
Excellent. Ken, it was a pleasure to talk to you.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for having me on here, and I look forward to more talks on and off screen or whatever.